And we're recording. All right. So we've got Ricky Gease, Director of State Parks here, who's going to get us in motion, Director of Parks and Outdoor Recreation, which you did a good job of. We were at a conference yesterday and we talk about state parks all the time, but there is still the Office of Outdoor Recreation. That should go away. If you get your big enough, then it should. Oh, you are screen sharing. We are well aware. All right. Well, it doesn't show up there.
Okay.
I don't think it shows up on the share. Maya, is the drop down showing up on the share, or is it just it's showing the sharing well? Okay. Cool. Yeah, there you go. Get it out of there. All right. Oh. Oh no, Ricky. I'm gonna drag it over. Did you even do that?
No. Move it over the other way.
We're gonna go to the bottom.
Okay.
We're gonna go.
Great.
No, that's worse, maybe, huh? Yeah. I think if we quit messing with it, it'll go away. Where's that? We did it. All right, perfect. Hopefully that's showing up for folks online. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, we've got Ricky Gease here to start off, and then he's going to launch into Gary Greenberg, who's joining us virtually. He's the founder of the Alaska Map Company. And then we are going to have Alex Eid, right? Yeah, here as well from State Parks. So yeah, let's welcome him. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. And thank you to Alaska Trails for hosting this conference. I think it's a great time for everybody in the outdoor recreation trails community to get together and be supportive and learn from each other and understand what everybody's doing. So here we go. We're going to talk about the outcomes of the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan from 2023 to 2027. We're going to talk about how we're doing with a statewide partnership advisory group. We're going to talk about building capacity within parks internally, what we're doing, and talk about our GIS Hub. Alex here is one of the people that we hired in our Office of Community Engagement that we did, and he's going to talk a little bit about some exciting things that we're doing. So we'll get started here. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the SCORP. The SCORP is used as the way that we evaluate land water conservation fund grant projects and recreational trails projects and evaluation and ranking and scoring. There's always a lot more projects and applications than what is available for funding. And so you got to have some prioritization of what we're going to be focused on from 5 years, 5-year period of time. The National Park Service for the SCORP itself just allowed us to have these plans in place for 10 years instead of 5 years. And then, so when it gets to 2027, we're going to roll the existing SCORP over for another 5 years. And what we'll do is we'll update the data that was used to inform the SCORP, and we'll update the data that was used, but the SCORP and the framework itself will continue on. We also talked about, we had a statewide advisory group, which was basically a bunch of different federal agencies, state agencies, user groups to kind of come up with the parameters of the SCORP, what were our goals going to be, and how we were going to achieve them. One of the primary recommendations from the SCORP was that many states are working to build out offices of outdoor recreation. So in the SCORP itself, we had 3 goals that the National Park Service recognized that we could use when we do land water conservation fund, which was access to activities and health and wellness and stewardship and conservation. But then we had 4 other activities or 4 other kind of pillars or goals that weren't included. And nationwide, people have seen a gap in that, and they wanted to include workforce development, economic development, partnerships for funding, partnerships for management. So, and we've heard about partnerships for funding and partnerships from management. I think the one that Ben just did for Sitka was excellent in terms of partnership, agency partnerships. So this Office of Outdoor Recreation, we've been focused on internally, how do we build that office out? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then one of the outcomes of working with great partners, and Gary Greenberg is a great partner, is like he designed our initial GIS hub for us. And so Gary's going to jump on and show us what we're doing on that. So just a quick snapshot of what the SCORP was. So just a quick survey in the room. How many people have actually participated in the SCORP planning process? Raise your hands if you did that. So quite a few folks. And then how many people have actually seen it? Okay, so most folks. If you haven't seen it yet, you should go check it out. It's one of the better SCORPs in the country, and it's been used as a model for elsewhere in the country. We did some innovative things in the SCORP, and I'll talk about those in a bit. But these 7 goals, you can imagine them as pillars for any outdoor recreation. And you can use these pillars when you go advocate for financing at the municipal level, at the state level, at the national level, if you're finding partnerships, if you go to the Denali Commission, search for funding. If you go to the Rasmussen Foundation, search for funding. We partnered with the Helmsley Foundation at Independence Mind. We used these as kind of objectives, goals, pillars for rationale of why this investment is important. Why are we doing outdoor recreation? And so the advisory group that we had distilled all the possible things that we could be focused on into these 7 areas. One is accessible outdoor recreation activities. So in Alaska, more than 80% of the people in our state engage in outdoor recreation activities. It's pretty hard to be an Alaskan if you don't get outside. Just the way it is. And we have outdoor recreation activity participation that's doubled of the next closest state. And that next closest state is Montana. And they're less than half, about 40% people engage in outdoor recreation there. The second pillar is economic development. And this is really important for, I think, everybody to start thinking about the metrics for economic development. So we're in the Department of Natural Resources, right? And you think economic development. Well, what is natural resources in Alaska? Well, there's forestry, right? There's mining, Division of Mining, Land and Water, agriculture, right? Oil and gas, right? Used to be more than half our budget used to be funded in state government on that. What's the second largest gross domestic product in Alaska that DNR manages? Outdoor recreation, right? The Division of Parks and Outdoor Recreation manages the most visited public lands in the state. Chugach State Park is the most visited public lands in the state. We have a cadre of folks from Chugach here and elsewhere across the state. We manage Chugach State Park with less than 10 people. Let that soak in just a little bit. I first started in Kenai Fjords National Park in 1992. I've been here for more than half my life. We had more than 60 people managing Kenai Fjords National Park, and we have more visitation in Chugach now than what we had, at Kenai Fjords where I started. Part of the conversation that we're facing nationally about public lands management and statewide is, I call it boondock management, where we have to trust the visitor and educate the visitor to engage and use our public lands in a responsible manner, because we don't have the resources to be a nanny state to take you by the hand and take you out and explore all the resources we have in Alaska. No way we could afford it. No way we could manage it. And besides, Alaskans don't want that. That's not how we want to envision our park system. So we don't do that. Gates are open, come visit. If we can charge a fee, if the water's turned on, we're going to charge you a parking fee. We'll try and get around and clean all the restrooms with the staffing that we have, try and make things clean. But you go out there, you're on your own. We're not going to tell you about, bears are out there, but we're not going to be, you got to deal with bears, right? We're not going to bear-proof trails for you. But economic development is really important. And when you write for grants, You have a bunch of different places where you can get for grants. And we have the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, ADA. They have bonding capacity, right? Because we're a legislatively designated area, we can't access ADA bonding, but I wish we could. It's one of the things that I think our statutes should change so we can get better infrastructure in our state parks. But, you know, ADA does a lot of different things in mining and roads and transportation, utilities. It's very difficult in Alaska to get people to recognize the economic footprint. It's, you know, $3.5 billion activity in our state. We want people to come here. Yeah, we can build hotels, we can build motels, we can have cruise ship docks, we can have ports, we can have harbors. But unless there's a trail that people can walk on, what activity are they going to do? What's the draw? How do you do the fill the day out besides just sleeping someplace? That's why we've embedded economic development into the SCORP. And that's how you can think about how you leverage your narratives to get funding for what we're doing. Workforce development. Everybody in the room here, since I became director, my hair's changed colors. There's a lot of people who our hairs are changing color. Who's coming behind us, right? Workforce development is really, really important. As I age, I find it more and more important. And I love the presentation earlier today, right? How do you do workforce development? How do you get people to get engaged in the outdoors as a potential career? First job, could I do this for the rest of my life? Yeah, you can. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Active and healthy lives. Number one driver in our budget in Alaska is what? Healthcare, right? What's the cheapest way to get healthy?
Walking.
20 minutes a day for 3 days per week outside. Best way to get healthy, right? It is the sun, fresh air, makes your body healthy. Being indoors all the time, looking at phones. I know, I heard from my sweetheart, you're glued to that machine, get out of here, go play with the dogs. And I do, and I feel better, right? It's like an addictive drug, but we got to get out of it. And think about us. We didn't even grow up at, you know, from age 1, 2, 3. Now people entering the workforce have been, that's their new, right? Very addictive. We have the best way to be healthy and be addicted to that, but to be healthy. Stewardship and conservation, that's what this is about. How do you build trails that are sustainable, that aren't goat trails, going straight up the hill, right? And then how do you educate and bring users along with you that this is important? One of the more interesting, how many people have been out at South Eagle River parking area and gone out South Eagle River, right? What new feature do we have on the hillside? We have the man who built it right here in the room. We're privileged, right? It was a zigzag pattern, right, on this, but it's a sustainable trail and it's awesome. The Muktuk Marston Trail, right? Going through Hunter Pass and coming in and connecting with the trail up there. Oh my God, I still remember that parking lot and John being there. And it's just like, okay, we're really having an argument about how many switchbacks we're going to put on this mountainside. There's going to be a trail there. It's going to grow over. In about 10 years, you won't see it. But really, that's going to scar your imagination and love for the outdoors if you see a trail on the mountainside. Instead of this goat rope that goes straight up the mountainside, just because that's what you've had to look at for 40 years, because we haven't had the funding to put in a good trail, right? You know, so, you know, we should be really thankful that we have quality trail crews in our state who build sustainable trails, because it helps us as land managers. If it's built well, if it's built right, we don't have to a lot of cost to maintain it. And it's really, really important as we move forward. Sustainable outdoor recreation funding, really important, right? Everybody here, I wish everybody here, when you come up and you do a presentation, who funds you? Is it a recreational trails program, land water conservation trail? Is it the borough? Where do you get your money from? I know. Bed tax. 30% of the bed tax in the Matsu borough. Where's that bed tax come from? The Princess Lodge, out-of-state people. You know, we got to get creative to capture funding. Where does half of our funding come from? The other half that matches the funds that we collect in state parks is the vehicle rental tax. You know where that vehicle rental tax comes from? Vehicles that are rented. Who pays for that? Outdoor people, outside people, people who mostly aren't Alaskans renting cars. Some people do, but most people don't, right? So we have to, and in our state, it's difficult to find that match funding, right? We have some recreational trails funding. It funds a lot of projects here. The person who manages that program at the federal level took the buyout. I don't know what the history is going to be moving forward. I hope it goes on. Does a lot of trail work in this state, right? Hopefully, you know, we get some programs and it's sustainable. So funding partnerships, Denali Commission, they are partners for rural areas and can provide match. Are they going to be around? I don't know, right? So these funding partnerships are going to become more and more important. And I alluded to the America 250 Act, and we're going to, you know, if you have trail events and stuff, by the fall time, I'd upload them because we're going to be able to have celebrations in 2026 that can maybe tie to national sponsors, and we can get a foothold in sponsors to sponsor events in Alaska, trail events in Alaska. So being creative in these funding partnerships may become more necessary, not less necessary. And then partnerships in outdoor recreation management. So we just had a thing at ATIA yesterday, right? The Park Service, the National Park Service, seems to be doing okay with their staffing levels. Tongass, not so much, right? I think what, 2/3 of their staffing is already left. And the other third are looking for jobs because they don't know if there's going to be a Tongass National Forest with a regional office in Alaska. That's kind of scary, especially in our state. I mean, forest management in our state is really interesting. Which state has the two largest national forests in the world? Alaska, Chugach and Tongass. Which state has no logging in it? Chugach and Tongass, basically, right? So what does that fall upon? Outdoor recreation. How does that tie for economic development? If people at the national level only see forestry and timber as the economic driver for that activity and that purpose on that land, and they don't see outdoor recreation or the benefits, and we don't measure it, we don't think it's important, either at the state level or the national level, then that becomes a problem because the ability to clear trails from windfall will become more prevalent. So if you have a business, a guiding business, and you go out in Southeast and you depend upon that trail and a natural disaster happens, do we have wind events in our state? Yeah. Do we have fire events in our state? Yeah. Do we have things called earthquakes in our state? Yes. Do we have things that are called landslides in our state? Yes. We have all those things. And when they take out stuff, we have to look to FEMA and emergency disaster declarations. We have no pot of money in our state, right, to deal with it at state parks. You go down, how many people have been down to the Anchor River State Recreation Area? Anybody been down to Anchor River? Okay, we have $900,000 worth of damage. There's no fun to do it. We'll be Alaskans, right? We'll do boondock management. We'll put some gravel. We'll just do stuff, but it's, you know, we lost some wetlands, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Half of our gravel in the parking lots is now in the wetlands. Like, that's no longer wetland, so we can expand our parking there, right? Potentially, that's how some people see it, who want to build profit centers, right? So partnerships and management are really important. We had a conversation, we're just yesterday, right? Mendenhall Glacier, #2 most visited public lands in the state, right? They get 700,000-800,000 people a year coming off cruise ships to go out there. Last year, for the first time, they had the tribe partnership with the Klinkahida tribe to do co-management, you know, partnerships, being there, have a footprint there. This year, you know who's going to run the visitor center? Klinkahida, because they don't have any other staff, right? That's why partnerships in our state are really, really important, and building not just a volunteer base, but, you know, I think in terms of economic development, getting the Alaskan Native regional corporations, village corporations, and tribes investing in public lands in the state for the next 20, 30, 50 years is going to be really important. What's the economic driver if DC goes away as the funding source for everything that's being done in our trails and stuff? It's going to be the Alaska Native community, right? The 200, close to 250 village and regional corporations, for-profit corporations, produce more than half the economic output of the state. Oh, by the way, where do those profits stay? In the state, right? So we have to be thinking long-term of what we're doing. What were some of the new things that we did with the SCORP? When we did the SCORP, we took $400,000, which is a massive amount of money for a division that is chronically underfunded. But we thought it was important to build in data-based structures, data-centric structures to figure out what's the importance and why outdoor recreation is important. So one of the things that we did, and we had Gary do, is we mapped the state of there's 12,000 public parcels in Alaska. How many are used for outdoor recreation? 6,500. So a little more than half the public parcels available in the state. Most of the state is public lands. So it's, 90% of the state is public lands, 10% is owned by regional and village corporations. It was really important that we build out the supply of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about the demand also, but the demand, doing heat maps, basically, and we used GPS data from cell phones, right? Figure out where people are going. It's not a census. Everybody doesn't have a cell phone, but it's pretty close to a census. The other thing that we did is we divvied up the state into 6 different regions to give kind of equity in terms of looking at the full state and thinking about outdoor recreation on a statewide level. So we followed the regional corporation boundaries. So in the Arctic area, NANA, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, formed the boundaries of the Arctic area. Western Alaska, we have Bering Straits and Chilista. Southwest, we have Aleut Corporation, Bristol Bay, and Kodiak. The interior, Atna and Doyon. South Central, we have Siri and Chugach. And for Southeast, it's Sea Alaska. So those footprints, and the reason why we did that is that when you drill down into the regional and village corporations, those delineations are clear within those regions of the state, as are the tribal areas. We were looking at trends and benefits. So we did the data for demand from 2019, 2020, and 2021. And prior to hand off to Alex here, we looked at what that is. And so some of the trend data that you can see is visitor counts, people in state, people out of state. With those overall, you could do winter, spring, summer, fall. And this data it becomes accurate around 2019. And this data is there for anybody to buy, right? And pretty much all the public lands are delineated. And if you need to focus in on a trail, so like Sitka Trail Works on that trail could go and buy the data back to 2019, delineate the trail boundary, and look at the use patterns before and after doing that project. And the heat map will be different after you construct the trail. So we could do that in Chugach if we wanted to look at the Muktuk Marston Trail. What's the visitation in this part of the park that didn't get a lot of use? What's its use now? So you can do these before and after benefits of demand. And anybody can do that. And we're looking, one of the things to talk about is we're looking for funding partnerships to buy the data, but then to process the data. You got to clear out airline traffic. Who turns their cell phone off really when you're in an airplane? Nobody does. Nobody does. So you got to clean out all that data. And then you can find out where people are from. Who are the most people who visit state parks? Us. We talk about investments in Alaska state parks. It's investments in us, in our health, in our economic benefits, workforce. Those are investments in us. A lot of times I go to conferences and stuff, and it's like, one of the things I never really talk about is like, we have 700 businesses that do work in our state, in state parklands. It's a lot of jobs, right? You know, we say we have more commercial business employees that operate in state parks than we have employees. Right? So our footprint, our economic footprint goes beyond just what we do in terms of state employees that sometimes people think about. One of the things that was to say, okay, we're going to build these offices of outdoor recreation, right? And what that office is supposed to do is to look at the economic benefits and the workforce development benefits and kind of take traditional things that are in departments of commerce or in governor's offices or in DNRs and kind of be an open platform of idea sharing. And so we took that and we're the division of parks and outdoor recreation. So Alaska State Parks, we reorganized and we say that we now have an office of Alaska State Parks. It's one half of what we do. And we also divvied up the duties in Alaska State Parks. Before, when you went to be the park ranger did the law enforcement, the park ranger cleaned the bathrooms, and the park ranger did the, maintenance of everything, right? So if you wanted to get a trail built, it was a conundrum. Like, do you set out your one park ranger who has law enforcement authority to go do trail works for 3 weeks? Then you're left without a park ranger with law enforcement authority. So what we did is we created a separate section statewide. So now we have dedicated 100% professional law enforcement, 25 people spread out through the state. So we have 157 parks. We have 25 people to do the resource conservation and law enforcement. So it's still, not great numbers, but it's good numbers, right? We have park management. So that's actually a career series now for law enforcement. You can start out as an intake ranger, go through the academy, become a park ranger 1, become a supervisor ranger, or become the superintendent across the whole state for law enforcement. That's a separate career track now. So if somebody wants to become a park ranger in law enforcement, you can do a career with us. If you want to do park management, we have ACCs, seasonal workers. You can become a park specialist. You can graduate up to a natural resource tech and you become a regional park superintendent. That is now a career track. So we have 2 career tracks now. And we also separated out permitting. So we have a separate thing where we do all our commercial use permits. There's about 700 commercial use permitting. That's all online now. We try and get things done in a day. Right? Very efficient. It's doing well. We're taking all our special events and special use permits, getting that done, reducing the time to process all that. So our park management, hopefully in the field, we've got a $900 or $90 million plus deferred maintenance budget. So we're trying to take that low hanging fruit to get people out into the field more. We turned all our park specialists into year-round people so that in the wintertime, we just had somebody was saying, geez, up at Prospect Heights, those picnic tables are looking pretty shabby, So Ben, before he left, was on it, we had year-round staff now, can deal with that type of stuff. So we can get those repairs done. We have offices of outdoor recreation. This is what sometimes people don't think about, right? These offices of outdoor recreation provide statewide services. So for our outdoor recreation grants, we do more than $10 million worth of grants every year through our divisions grant section. Boating safety grant, heritage preservation grants, certified local government grants, maritime heritage grants, RTP grants, land water conservation grants. We have more than 100 open grants right now. Right now that we have. Our Office of Design and Construction, we have 66 construction projects going across the 6 regions in the state right now that we have just within state parks. Our Boating Safety Office, we're a water state. Who here does not get on water at some point during the year? Probably no one, right? Everybody gets on water. Who's behind us? Little kids. Any death is a tragedy. So we do the Kids Don't Float life jacket program. Who's seen our little Kids Don't Float program? So most people here. Yeah. And in addition to that, they educate more than 10,000 Alaska youth per year. And then we train the instructors so that training can happen hands-on in local communities. So for both boating instruction and for water safety instruction. And our kind of deputy for that section, Annie, she just won for the second time the National Boating Safety Instructor of the Year. They came up with the Save It for the Shore program. Anybody hear the Save It for the Shore program? Who here drinks microbrew beer, Alaskan breweries? Let's go around the room. What do you drink?
I looked to the deal on it, put it at the brewery.
Okay, get another one. There's like 60 in the state. Just shout them out. Okay. Girdwood Brewing. Got okay. What I want everybody to do, if you go to those breweries, right? Ask them if they participate in the Save It for the Shore program, because they fund that program, and say thank you as a user for caring about drunk boating, right? Nobody wants drunk boating going on. Seriously, it's a big thing. Nobody wants drunk boating. Nobody wants people getting in accidents. And that program is a funding partnership with the breweries of the state. And that's kind of Annie's genius, that she reached out to all the brewing companies and say, can we do? So we got about half of them that participate in that program. If they don't, needle them a little bit. Say, hey, you should participate in this program. Community engagement is what Alex does. Our community engagement does all, we went cashless, right? So now we have about 100 plus credit card electronic fee stations. There's nothing more boring or disgusting than being in a closed room counting cash with plastic blue gloves that turn black and having to wear a face mask before COVID, right? It was like, we should not be in this business. Let's get out of this business. And so cash fee compliance shoots up when you don't have to have people in parking lots come up with $5, which is either a 5 or 3 ones that are wet and crumply and an assortment of change, or all change, right? It's just a nightmare. But community engagement is all our fees, social media, and then the point on the GIS Hub and our social surveys and stuff. And then our history and archaeology is any federal money that comes into the state needs a Section 106 compliance for the National Historic Preservation Act. Anything you do, who here has dealt with a Section 106 for a trail project? Anybody who's written the grant should raise your hands because it's required, right? So all those, we have more than 1,000 permits go through that office every year. Typically on major construction projects, we have what are called scripts. They're archaeological permits. The last 3 years, because of the Infrastructure Act, we've had more than 100. So we're threefold the amount of work. And then we have compliance and review folks who review all that type of stuff. Their workload has been incredible and they do an awesome job. One of the sections of the 4 sections of that is our state historian section, and that's Katie Ringsmith. And we will get online an events calendar. You can voluntarily upload your stuff for America 250. We chose baseball, tried to be as nonpartisan as possible, something that everybody could get behind and enjoy. But all your events, you can upload your own events on that once we get it done and up and running. What are some things that we have done in our community engagement for capacity building? Alex, new staff person. We stole an administrative position from the field offices, become more efficient there. Did this. We have an annual contract now with our GIS contractor, Gary. We are built into our land water conservation grants and to our RTP grants, the software, the data systems that we need. So with Esri, which is the ArcGIS software to run a GIS hub, we're paying for that. We're paying for the Qualtrics software survey, public survey system. We're paying for the submittable grants type stuff. We're doing that all through these federal grants, because when I went to the state and to the department to seek funds to pay for that stuff, it was like, yeah, sorry, bud. You gotta find those resources on your own. We did find them. It took a little while, but they're now getting put in place. So we are working on our 157 park units, establishing all our parks, trails, facilities, developing all the mapping standards for that, so all the communities can upload. So it's pretty cool stuff. Alex is going to share a revisitation of our SCORP survey and share some of those results that we have. Again, I said your online portal, who has applied for an RTP grant through us? Okay, this next year's experience is going to be different because it's just going to be online. It's going to be through Submittable. There's going to be no PDFs. It's just going to be, hopefully it'll be pretty cool. We'll hear about it. Give us feedback. If it's not good, but I think everybody's done a good job of that. When I first came on, I wanted to know what's the value of these 157 park units, and what's the condition reports of like our bathrooms and our campgrounds and trails, and it's like I don't know. Right, we don't have an asset managing system. We're going to use that hub as our asset management system, and there's a module built into the Esri software system that we're going to be using. And then we'll be working with people, and we're here at the conference trying to educate you on how to use the hub to upload your trails information. Last thing I'm going to talk about is just this right here, and one of the limitations that we had on what we did. The SCORP was a pilot study. We bought all the demand, the GPS software, or the GPS data. We bought 19, 20, 21. We worked with RRC Associates. They do all the National Park Service visitor surveys across the country. The resolution that we could do for the state got down to a 1/4 mile. Now that's great on a macro level, but at a micro level, if you want to see trail use and trail data, it's not functional. So this is what you're seeing there is high use and low use areas, but they're a 1/4 mile pixels. That really doesn't help you delineate, if you got a couple different facilities or use things in that area. The resolution we need is about a 30-foot pixel. And that's one of the reasons why we're collecting the data for trails now, to get the resolution, the accuracy of trails to get narrower than 30 feet. To get a certified trail, Gary's going to talk about that. It's about 40 feet. With the new system that we have, the Aero 3000, it's down to about 4 feet to 7 feet, depending on the satellite configuration. So we'll be working on that. One of the things that we don't have is a computing power, and we need to talk with the University of Alaska about partnering with us to process all the data. But we aim to make all this data available for federal agencies, state agencies, municipalities, and really allow you to get the use that's happening at all these different levels. I think Matsu is one of 4 municipalities in the state that had good enough data to share with parks when we did it. But not everybody's at that level, and we're trying to build capacity to get all these other areas. So is there any questions with what I covered those initial slides? Yes.
Can you speak to the cost and accuracy of this method versus more traditional trail counters?
Sure. Yeah. So when we're looking at the demand data, traditional trail counters, I don't know what the expense is. If you want discrete data in one location, trail counters are great, right? If you want a before or after, something like that, trail counters are going to give you the best thing. If you want a macro level of use for outdoor recreation across the state, the GPS data is the most accurate, highest number of use that you'll get. It's not a census, but it's a sampling, and it gives you the most accurate trend line data over time. So it just depends on what your data needs are. And it costs us $35,000 to buy 3 years worth of data. But that was statewide, the land and the water data, and it took about $65,000 to process 10% of that data. So we got out of the 6,500 parcels, around the 600 or 6,000 parcels across the state that are used for public recreation, we processed 650. So about 10%. They would run their computer. They have run a business Monday through Friday. And then for like the 9 months that we were processing the data, they would dedicate all their computers. They would link them up and process the data over the weekends. That's not the way to do it, right? So we need supercomputers that the universities have. And at some point in the future, I will be coming around to all the different trail groups and municipalities and federal agencies and other state agencies to say, let's get a funding partnership to purchase this data on an annual basis and to process it through the university. And then it'll be open. Anybody can look at it and use that, and you'll be able to use it in your grant applications, but other type of stuff either. Some of these land management agencies, I'll give you an example. Trespass issues on the mental health trust land are an issue. For if you're a regional or a village corporation, let's say on a Fognac or on the outer Kenai Peninsula coastline, right now in March and April and May, there's a spring bear hunting season. Who's using our lands? You're not going to put a trail cam up there to capture 40 miles of coastline. This is the only data that you'll be able to look at. And whether or not you know it, the GPS, whether you have your phone turned on or not, off, is still working. So that's the way it works, right? And whether you know it or not, you voluntarily bought your phone, and you voluntarily, when you started your phone, agreed to data sharing, and you downloaded out of the world of 150,000 apps, whether it's on Google, Android, or Apple. I want to use that app. And who has the weather app on their phone? Who has Anchorage or Kenai or Matsu on there as a location? When you click to get the weather of that location, you're sharing all your GPS data. That's how it works. That's how they make money on apps. That GPS is what makes a smartphone smart. So that's how it works. So anyway, long-winded answer on that. I'm going to introduce Alex next. Alex is going to take us through the latest SCORP survey findings from the questions that we used in the SCORP. And then Alex is our point person for the GIS Hub as we move forward, along with Gary, and then also the Qualtrics software system. And what's cool about the Qualtrics software system, and we'll be getting it back online here in July, is that we will work with you if you have visitor or use survey questions that you want to target in area. So with that, Alex.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ricky.
All right. So I would first start to say, what do you think? How many people frequent Chugach State Park, and how many of those people are locals or tourists? Just a percentage. Is it up there? Yeah. Yeah, it's about 70, I think. And these quick little latest findings that we've shown with the last SCORP survey is that most of the users are all going to be locals, especially within the Chugach. There is a little bit of variation, but most of the things that people are interested in for improvements and whatnot are more trails. We're kind of at a standstill at the ones that we have, and as you have kind of listened, that we have a small crew, so a lot of people are talking about wanting better maintenance of existing facilities and improved accessibility over time. But the majority of why people are unable to get out is usually because of weather conditions. I don't think that's stopping most Alaskans. I see everybody going out in like full-on rain gear at times, trudging up hills, mountain biking, you name it. And most of the other issues that people have, for barriers participating in the outdoors, are going to be, just they state that it's overcrowding. And I think what they're actually talking about is parking lots. crowded parking lots, and it's a contentious thing. There was a April Fool's joke that I was trying to make for our social media of putting a giant parking lot up on Canyon Road. Yeah, nobody thought that was funny. So I'm gonna go through this real quick so we can get to Gary. But preservation importance was insanely like sought after by many of the people that were using our outdoor facilities and our parks. And there was a strong importance in preserving those natural and cultural resources. It was like one of the most important things. Accessibility for many of these parks is always up for debate. There's some areas where we need to improve wheelchair accessible areas, and like it is a thing that we are looking at in the future. More trails are what the public opinion really wants. Lots of mountain biking trails. Strong interest in cabins. A lot of people were stating more European style yurt treks and stuff like that. It would be cool. And you never know. Camping access and more support for motorized recreation. Sustainability right now is kind of our key aspect where a lot of the people of the survey were looking at. Of course, the increased funding, more parking and regulation of the overflow. We only have a few rangers out there kind of policing that. Education on responsible recreation was another big one that the survey brought up, and expanded volunteer opportunities. We just did a volunteer cleanup at Thunderbird Falls. It was pretty good success with the help of some of the Chugach crew over there. We had probably about like 15 or 20 participants come out, volunteers, and that volunteer email list was coming out of the latest SCORP survey, and many of the people signed up for an email list for volunteer cleanup and other events. Oh. All right. And we're about to get Gary on the line here. And just wanted to touch base of building the capacity of our updated maps and brochures. I have made both of these maps with the help of Gary. And we're just trying to update and digitize many of the old brochures and to make it a little more viewable for people using their mobile phones. So we meet, relatively weekly, and we're updating the SCORP database as we speak. And and right now we're trying to create maps using a statewide national data set that Gary and I have been working on. And I think the next slide. Yeah, Gary, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
I'm going to toggle for you, and
Okay, thank you.
you're going to take it from here.
Okay, thanks everybody. My name is Gary Greenberg, Alaska Map Company. I've been doing GIS work from Wrangell to Wainwright in Alaska for the past 25 years or so. The SCORP project was really ambitious. What we worked on doing was consolidating all the data from the entire state for the critical park layers, which would be the boundaries, trails, facilities, and things like that. And we did a pretty robust job of doing that. And then we found like lots of limitations in the existing data on there. So what we saw before was a template that I've been working with Alex and Wendy on for updating the state park maps. To do that, you could see on the right-hand side was some of the layers that were used in the Chain of River State Recreation Area. We used this map as a template. Really, I thought it was a beautiful map. But you could see how the layers are. You could see there's Trailway 1, Trailway 2, Chain of Dome Trail. Each one of those layers each one of those trails is an individual layer. That's really difficult to manage. It's really difficult to pull together. That's just on one map. If we were to look at that from a data management standpoint at 150 maps, that's what's 3 times 100? That's 450 different trail layers just to make the park maps. That would be really difficult. So we started by trying to pull together some of the park maps from the old maps, but we decided just to go through and take all current data, modern data, pull together the highest resolution data for roads, for hydrography, for public lands, which would be the sections. We pulled them all together in a map template, which is uniform across the entire state, which allows us to recreate a map with about 10 steps, without having to dig through all those different layers. What we used for the SCORP was a style that was developed by the Park Service, which is really robust. But we found that a lot of folks weren't super happy with certain parts of it. And they didn't really match the styles of the maps that the state parks had in the past. What people didn't really like the way that the cabin looked and other things like that. So what we started to do was create a standardized style guide, which you see in the bottom left for the state park features. So we're working on that as well. As we go through each park, we add more facilities and roads and activities and things like that. And we're reviewing the facility schema that we can use for data collection. This is a work in progress, but we're really moving along, and we've already done a bunch of projects based on the parks that we've completed. Alex, can you hit the next slide, please? And then thank you. And then as we mentioned in the last, through some of Ricky's presentation is, we tried our best to match as much of the data we collected to the cell phone data to see if we could come up with meaningful results. We attempted to overlay some of the trail data with the cell phone data, but just because of the shifts and inaccuracies of the trail, we just weren't really able to come up with meaningful results because the GPS in your phone is more accurate than the trails that have been digitized. So what we're looking to do now is incorporate a Bluetooth GPS, the R100 Plus, to start to bring up the accuracy of the data that we have so it matches the cell phone data. And it also helps to streamline data collection. Can we hit the next slide, Alex? Thank you. So for data collection, what we did, we recently recovered the Trail Management Handbook from 2015. This Trail Management Handbook is 180 detailed pages of how to manage and map trails. It's amazing. It's an amazing document. And it also comes with the Appendix B is a GPS Trails Data Dictionary. It was really well designed, comprehensive, talks about things mapping stuff such as hazards, which was pretty appropriate for the last presentation, where if we had a hazard map of all the locations of the things that we needed to blow up, we could triage those things and then be strategic about it. So that would be a way for us to create a statewide map on that. So we updated the GPS. Oh, back one more. Sorry. We updated the GPS Trail Data Dictionary to a modern geodatabase. And you could see that on the left. So you could see all the layers that are involved in that. There'd be switchbacks, miscellaneous features, photo points, anchor points, signs, and hazards, structures, reference points, water crossings. It's just an amazingly detailed trail management handbook for those who are in deep with mapping trails. Next one, please. So again, everything in the handbook was out of date. Can everybody see this thing here? That's the picture on the left of the GPS photo link. It's a Trimble Nomad. It's basically a paperweight now. So we replaced that with the Arrow. Recently, the Park Service had presented on the National Trails data schema. That was last week or 2 weeks ago at the Alaska Geospatial Council conference. And in that, they had a call for trail data in Alaska. We went through and looked to provide our SCORP trails data to that effort, But this was the second question where you see accuracy, or the third question that was on their submittal. And it says trails collected by GPS devices, even cell phones in some cases, may meet the standard where 90% of trail center lines within 40 feet of their true position measured against imagery. Looking at the entire SCORP data set, there are some data sets within the SCORP that would meet these accuracy requirements, but the entire SCORP data set doesn't meet these accuracy requirements. So it wouldn't be possible for us to submit the entire SCORP data set now to the federal data set for conflation. Using the Arrow 100 GPS, the state of Missouri actually did a really successful project where they mapped their trails within a year, although Missouri is quite a bit smaller. And what we pulled together through our SCORP Hub is a field map that's designed to work with the Arrow to collect data to the federal standard for minimum schema. That's the next slide. So on to the next slide. You can see here that several other states are adopting the federal schema to conflate into a single statewide trails data set. That's essentially the process that we took through the SCORP. So we're a bit ahead of everybody, really. But you'll see on that list is the state of Missouri. Now that they've got really good data sets, they're looking to combine those to provide those to the federal government so that it can be put into the federal data set. In the SCORP, we established the process and tools and documentation for statewide conflation. All these other states they're just starting that, really. They're starting the process for conflation. But while we were doing the SCORP, we documented every step of that process through data models. You see there in the bottom right, that's a data model. It's like a workflow where you can automatically run, and it translates the data from the source to the destination schema, which became the SCORP schema. Could we have the next slide, please? So this is the documentation that we created during the SCORP to manage all of the data and how to update it. So not only does it last for the duration of the report, it's something that we could go back to, reference now, and then continue to build and maintain the statewide trails data set. So by having these tools that we pulled together in the SCORP, we have the ability to maintain statewide data sets for trails, parks, and facilities. Next slide, please. On the right, you'll see top right, that is the federal schema that has just been adopted. And what you'll see there is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a few fields. On the bottom left is the SCORP data set. That's what we combined for the SCORP. You'll see that we have a lot of those fields already. Not all of them, but most of them weren't available. Stuff like the surface, the class, the use, type of route. Those are really the things that we're missing. But what we did already catalog was the source of the data, the organization, the trail name, the trail type, and a few other fields for reporting, like the census areas and things like that. So that's what reads into the SCORP. So we're a step ahead of the game in order to create a statewide conflated data set. But what we could do is merge the data models that we created for the SCORP. Really, to merge it, it's not that different. They spelled trail type TRTYPE. We spelled it trail type TRAILTYPE. So making those match is not very difficult. We just need to start to be able to populate the fields for trail type, trail surface, trail class, and trail use. And by creating a data model, by creating this simple data model here, which we've already created and developed for field maps, it's relatively easy to populate. And we're going to start to do that. Those are going to be some of the first things that we do with the Arrow GPS. Okay, next slide, please. So this was what you see here is all the fields that we evaluated from all the different organizations. It's not all of them, but many of the fields we evaluated from the different organizations to field map into the SCORP data set. And what you see is some of the smaller organizations really just didn't have that many fields. By offering the by offering the federal geodatabase, the federal schema for download from the hub, it's going to enable some of the smaller jurisdictions like Cordova or Yakutat or Haines, a data model that they can download and start to populate that's going to be easy to conflate to a statewide and federal levels. So we're going to try to orchestrate that through the hub. Next slide, please. So once somebody is able to pull together some data for trails, the hub does have a Survey 123 form for submitting updated layers. You'll find this on the hub. It's you'll see that symbol at the top. It's a SCORP Recreational Data Survey. When you click on that, it's going to run you through a bunch of questions. It gives you the opportunity to upload your data. It gives you the opportunity to provide your URL in case you have your data as a service. So you have a park service layer, trail service layer, facility layer. All these can be used for us to plug into our models and maintain our statewide conflated trails layer, parks layer, and facilities layers. And those are the steps. The data is received by the Survey 123. Survey 123. It becomes visible on an internal map we have. So there's a little dot which has all this information on it. It says who contributed data. If you were a borough or a city or an organization that managed trails, we download the data, create a new model, remove the old layer from the SCORP, update it with the updated layer, which is hopefully more accurate and more detailed attributes like usages and stuff like that. And then we run the new layer and we update the SCORP. That's the whole process for us to not only have a statewide layer, but to maintain it for trails, parks, and facilities. Next one, please. So the trails we did create during the 2022 plan are the most comprehensive trails data set in the state of Alaska. It was adopted by the Alaska Geospatial Council, and it's promoted by the Geospatial Information Officer, Leslie Jones, as our best trails. But we do have the opportunity to continue to make it better if we work together on it. From what you see below, there is a trails working group. They pulled together some trails from a while ago. Those are pretty old and out of date. So we want to continue to improve this trails layer, not let it be orphaned like layers have been in the past. And then it meets more and more needs. And then it helps to enable people that have less resources in order to create the same data without having to design databases themselves. We want to be able to share this type of information with everybody. We want people to be able to contribute what they can. We have our minimum standard, which is the federal standard. That's probably what most folks are going to go and use that type of data. But we also have the data that is incredibly detailed for trail management and has a 150-page manual to work with. All that stuff we're going to be able to share on the hub. And that's going to enable people that are really detailed into the details of the trail work with it, and people that are relatively new to it, or just like city planners or something, people that don't specialize in this, but they'll be able to provide meaningful data that we can conflate using some of the tools that we're creating and working with now. Next slide, please. So what I could say is let's work together, use the hub, let's engage and standardize so that we all have access to better data for better decisions. I think that's it. Yep. Any questions?
Thank you.
So I'll take some questions.
Sure, I could stand here with you.
Great. Gary, do you have time for some questions?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I think we might have a few. Do folks in the room have questions for Gary, Alex, or Ricky? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for the detail, by the way. The schema and the fields you're using when you're updating from the for your trail database, when you're updating from the 2015 handbook, is that something? How would we get a look at that? Is that on the hub now, or should we contact you? We're updating the Anchorage communities and AMAT's trail plan right now, and we're just looking at this plan. It'd be interesting to see how they compare.
Yeah, if you connect with me, we could provide you with the geodatabase now. We just finished it like last week, so it's relatively new. But our plan is basically to put that geodatabase and the manual online. The manual still has a lot of older recommendations, like using like Pathfinder Office and stuff like that. But the schema has just been completed. We haven't really come up with the symbology for it yet, but that might not be something that you need. If you want to just connect with me when you can, we'll pull something together for you.
The folks working on the Anchorage AMANS plan all vigorously nodded their heads. Other questions?
Yeah, it's a great, it's such a detailed document. I mean, they've got like illustrations for how you use a clinometer it's just really cool.
Has anyone in like the trail building world interacted with the state parks trail management? With the manual?
Oh, no.
All the time. John Underwood in the back says all the time.
Oh, great. So he knows about it. So it would be interesting to have some of John's feedback.
Perhaps he will provide it at some point in time. Other questions in the room? Yeah.
So from my experience using the Arrow GPS, it kind of performed really poorly in high canopy areas. Do you guys anticipate any problems with that and any workarounds?
Repeat the question.
Gary, yeah, I couldn't hear that well.
Yeah, a question was asked, do we know if the Arrow GPS unit works well in high canopy areas? Another user of an Arrow device said that he has had some troubleshooting with that.
Yeah, that really is true of a lot of GPSs. I was speaking with Joel Cusick about that, and updating to a GPS that's going to work well in high canopy areas is extremely expensive. It's just really good when you're mapping trails. It's good to understand that you are in those high canopy areas and you're limited in the data that you can collect. But the Forest Service did do a assessment of their accuracy in high density high canopy areas, and I think they came up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 feet. What have you been observing as far as your accuracies in high canopy areas?
It takes forever to get the data, so it's just a hard, long process.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a good way around that at this point. But this is essentially the best that we could do using, what's feasible to buy.
Yeah, as of just testing the Arrow unit out and me putting that fancy, you have that fancy hat that you wear, you walk around with the antenna.
I just clipped it.
Just clip it. I mean, if you want to go stylish, you need to wear the hat. So just testing it out, I was down to about a 7-foot accuracy. And this was just kind of in the Thunderbird Falls area, but there is probably there's less canopy in that area. So get with Gary or get with I if you have any feedback on how to use the device. That would be really, really helpful to the community engagement team in building this hub. Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, just on that, you guys probably already figured this out, but at least with the Trimbles and other GPS, I haven't used the Arrows, but the fall and winter was always a better time. I mean, we get better accuracy when there's not foliage on the views, but still not quite as good in the higher in the deciduous forest.
And the biggest thing on doing the under canopy is things that help them own knowledge of the or if there's LiDAR finding the trail on that.
So apparently, Gary, that tweaking the like if there's heavy canopy, you just have to know the workarounds in certain different areas. And also, this is relatively new it's not relatively new for Gary, but my using of this device, which I'm basically the pack mule, going around to many of the different trailheads to test the device out. I'm learning how to use this as we go. So a lot of community input is going to be vital. So we have like full detailed accuracy of where the trailheads are, obstacles on the trail. In the back, question?
Well, I was just gonna say, I've used an arrow for several years. I've got the external antenna attached to it.
Nice.
And the other thing I noticed, rain on leaves is not, can't do it if it's wet leaves. So, definitely a drier day, you can be better, or, anytime.
Excellent. Gary, we should be operating this device when it's nice and sunny and dry out and free of rain.
That's great. So one of the nice things about the arrows is obviously a large community of people that are using it to share knowledge, and that's what we've seen. So as everybody's mentioned, mapping using a GPS under a canopy is never really going to be super accurate. But if you have support information, just as like Higgs said, if you have LiDAR where you can see where the trail is, there's no magical mapping tool that's going to come up with perfect data. So there's always some sort of a post-processing and review against other data that's more accurate. But what we've done, when we were starting to build out the Denali State Park map, we were using GPX and KML files, and just some of the data, people just weren't setting it to be mapped by distance, but time. So they'd stop and eat lunch, and you get a big spiral of dots on top of each other that counted for a mile. So this is going to help to remove some of the things like that, But again, under the canopy, it's just going to be tough. When you map your data, have other data to check it by.
Yeah, cleaning up the Denali Trail. When I was working with Gary on this, we had all the KMZ files and everything, but I also just used imagery and draw in the trail. And it might not be full on accurate, but I see within the decent imagery that we have, like, oh, there's a trail. Oh, actually, there's that switchback that needed to be corrected on the Curry Ridge Trail. So it might take a little bit of finagling, but it's a cool new device for state parks, and we're interested in using it. So a lot of feedback would be really appreciative.
I have a question for you about deployment. Like, you're the guinea pig right now.
I'm the guinea pig.
Great. You can't practically walk most of the trails in the state park system. So how are you going to deputize and deploy it to other folks to get you data? I'm
going to hand it off to our park specialists, hopefully in the future, send it to Matsu, send it out to Kodiak, send it, obviously we have it in Chugach here. It's going to take a big effort to get, everything mapped out and, dialed in with this new unit, and it's going to take the community to build that.
So one of the functions that could potentially be used in the hub right now is we did create a field map for it, and we used the federal standard, and then I've appended the GPS fields from Esri. So what those are is they say what was the device used to collect it, what was this, like the PDOP, sort of the geometry of the satellites that you were receiving when you were creating that trail. This field map could potentially be open to other folks where they can access it anywhere in the state. If they had a similar Arrow GPS, they could collect data directly into the same data set that we're doing. This was something that was prototyped by other parts of the state for the DEC did a project where they needed to inventory all of the lead lines for the entire state within a few months. So what they did was they created user accounts so that qualified folks that had an Arrow GPS, that did know how to map trails, that were following this, trail mapping guide, could have access and start to pull in data. They were able to pull in, I don't know how many, but they were able to pull in lead lines for the entire state within 6 months. So this is a potential use of the hub and a potential way for everybody to collaborate that is mapping trails to build into the same data set concurrently. Again, we're prototyping it, but it really is a couple of button clicks and some permissions to get that set up for everybody in the entire state to just collect their portion of the data, which could, potentially leverage everybody in this group to start collecting data.
Any other questions for Gary or I? And more importantly, the community engagement team, the one that I'm working under, I'm in charge of most of the social media that goes through the Alaska State Parks page. And if any of you are operating in state parks and have exciting things that you're doing in state parks, link it to me and we will promote it if it's, being done in state parks. Like, we want to build this community and we appreciate all the users that use it. Any other questions?
Alex, Ricky, Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Gary.